There we go. We're live.
Yes, what? We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Husker fans, to the very first installment of the Big Red Roundtable, a panel discussion of all things Husker football that's bourbon fueled and features the unholy alliance of the Husker Cuzcast and Generation Red, along with our guest in the studio today, Chris, the host of the Huskers in Enemy Territory podcast on YouTube. For the next hour or so, we're going to talk about 6 topics. And hopefully it only goes an hour or so, but we'll see. And we thank you for watching. My name is Ken. I'm from Generation Red.
Oh, yes. And I'm Scott. I am also from Generation Red. I am attempting to share our live stream right now on social media platforms. Welcome to the stream.
Go ahead, guys.
I am Justin with the Husker Cuzcast.
I am Derek with the Husker Cuzcast.
And I am Tyler with the Husker Cuzcast.
Thanks for
joining us, guys. I'm Christopher with Husker and Enemy Territory.
That's right. He is our guest panelist tonight, and I first noticed your channel, Chris, about 6 months ago or so, I think it was, when I was looking for Husker content, and son of a gun, this bearded guy popped up on my screen. I said, let me check this out. And I thought it was pretty good. And then we happened to find each other on Twitter, and when Justin and I started talking about this as something that we might want to do, you were kind of the first guy I thought about adding to our first live stream. So thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Why don't you let everybody know how long you've been doing the podcast on YouTube and why you came up with the name that you did?
So I think I've been doing it for about a year now. I think I started it, let's say, I think it was probably last December maybe. So one reason why I started the channel was because I wasn't really getting the kind of the Husker content that I wanted to see through the media, because since I live in Iowa, and that's one reason why I do have the Huskers in Enemy Territory name, because I live in Iowa. So it's really tough for a lot of us over here in Eastern Iowa to get Huskers content. So I figured, why not start up a channel for myself?
Sounds good. Neat, so where you said you're what? You're really in enemy territory because you're right there, over there by Iowa City, aren't you?
Yeah. So we're located in just south of Iowa City in a city called Riverside.
All righty. Well, that's awesome. Thanks again, Chris, for joining us tonight. And as we talked about in our pre-show talk, and just in case anybody who watches a lot of live streams may get pissed off at me for this next part, but Chris isn't going to lead off our talk tonight, even though that's proper etiquette for a live stream or a podcast, because his topic is so good, we decided to leave the best for last. So we've got 6 great topics to talk about tonight, and if any of you have read the topic list that I put out on Twitter, horse porn isn't one of them, just so you know.
I guess I'll tear that page out.
Justin was excited too.
Look for that.
He was
got some
strapped
quality
up and
research
ready to
in on
go.
that one.
Some quality research. You had to have a live
video I had to watch.
Yeah. Well, we're going to lead this one off with Scott's topic. He's got a great one for us because, damn it, we just haven't argued enough about this one. So go ahead, Scott.
Hey, folks. So my topic that I wanted to talk about was the painful and historically significant era that is known as the Frost era, and reflecting on it. And I'll just kick it off by just stating that I think it's pretty much safe to say that that Frost has been probably the worst coach that we have had since the Bill Jennings era. For some background with Bill Jennings, he was our coach from 1957 until 1961, and finished with a record of 15-34. Frost currently holds a 15-29 record. Both are well below the 500 ratio. And even Mike Riley, which I would argue is probably one of the worst coaches we've definitely had in the last 60 years, even he was able to scrounge up a 500 winning record going 19-19. In 4 seasons, the best record that Frost has been able to accumulate has been a 5-7 record that came in 2019. And I'll just spout off a few interesting things that I just kind of wanted to highlight was that the top 10 wins of the Frost era, which arguably there's probably only 10 wins that are even quote unquote notable of the Frost era. And the top 2 of them, in my opinion, and just by record alone, both came in 2018. Number 1 being Michigan State, which they finished that season 7-6, and Minnesota in 2018, which they finished that season 7-6. But then if you go down the list with Illinois, Penn State, Illinois again, Rutgers, Northwestern this year, Purdue, Maryland, Northwestern in 2019, none of their records are above 700 or above 500. Aside from, like I said, those 2, Michigan State, Minnesota, and then technically Illinois, but they went 6-7 because they lost in their bowl game. So most notable games of the Frost era have been against opponents that were sub 500. So that's just something to reflect on. And the next thing that I wanted to talk about was most notable players, in my opinion, that we have seen in the Frost era. And that would be the following. And I just want to make a note that I'm only picking the players that have either graduated here or are currently on the roster, and they're not in any particular order. And I'm sure all of these names you guys will reflect on and be like, yeah, they were pretty dang good. We got Stanley Morgan Jr., Divine Azigbo, Luke Gifford, Cam Taylor-Britt, Darian and Damian Daniels, Ben Stilley, Lamar Jackson, Khalil and Carlos Davis, Cam Jurgens, Will Honus, Jojo Doman, DiCaprio Boodle, Freedom Akinmoladun. I can still never say that name. Samari Torre, Austin Allen, and Jack Stoll. Those are the 18 significant players, in my opinion, that have been in the Frost era, which, of course, none of them are actually Frost recruits for obvious reasons that Frost has only been here for 4 years. And so we really don't have much of a pool to pick from that. But then current notable players during the Frost era have been Garrett Nelson, Nick Henrik, Luke Reimer, Xavier Betts, Ramir Johnson, and Omar Manning. Other than that, I went through every single player that Frost has had on his roster, ones that either, like I said, they've either stayed and graduated or are currently on our roster. There really isn't much to pick from. These are great names, great players. They've contributed a lot to our team, but not a single one of them ended up in the top 3 draft picks or top 3 rounds in the draft pick. By no stretch of the imagination have they seen any sort of significant awards aside from, onesies and twosies. But obviously a lot of notable players aren't Frost recruits simply because he's only been here for 4 seasons. An honorable mention that I do have is Adrian Martinez. He is the only one I left off the list simply because he technically graduated, but he did do a graduation transfer to K-State, therefore not meeting my criteria. And then the last of notable players are notable players that transferred, which there's only 5 of them that I could possibly figure out. We got number 1, absolute standout player for Kentucky this year, Wandale Robinson. He had over 1,300 yards of reception, or 1,300 yards receiving for this 2021 season. Number 2, I had J.D. Spielman. He transferred to TCU, and then he ended up retiring. Honestly, I think if he would have stayed around here, he would have been a lot more successful. Number 3, as I stated before, is Adrian Martinez, transferring to K-State. And this one's a little bit controversial. Luke McCaffrey. I don't think he's a notable quarterback, but I only included him simply because I do think if he would have changed his position and used his athleticism elsewhere, he definitely would have been able to contribute to our squad. And then last on the list is Greg Bell. He ended up having a 1,000-yard rushing season this year at San Diego State. So that's just kind of some notable players, records, all that stuff. I only have one more thing I wanted to talk about, which is just the coaching staff and then just a goofy little statistic about our win-loss record that I'm sure we can talk about. But before I go just way into the weeds with all of that, in regard to notable players and our win-loss record, does anybody have anything significant that they want to add or comment on?
I didn't realize that we were going to go into the notable players portion of Scott Frost, but that is interesting. I think you covered it all. When I was looking, going over it in my head, I think you covered all of, the past players and the current players. I was waiting for you to say Marcus Fleming because I was a huge Marcus Fleming guy. I've always been a Marcus Fleming guy, so I always bring him up as a guy that transferred to Maryland, even though he never panned out there. But I thought
you got Mo Washington. He's at
Yeah.
Grambling now, isn't
yeah,
he?
yeah,
Yeah,
Grambling.
there were a
Brian,
few
yeah,
other
yeah.
ones like Marcus Fleming, and then Tyjon Lindsey was another one that I considered,
Oregon
but
State. Yep.
simply because they didn't really have like standout stats to really look at. The only, like I said, Luke McCaffrey was the only exception that I made just because of his pure athleticism. Not to say that Tyjon Lindsey or Marcus Fleming didn't have outstanding athleticism. I think I'm just, pulling out the McCaffrey name because, well, he's a McCaffrey, but
He's athletic.
yeah,
Who
I
was
kind of
that?
took. What was that?
Who was that linebacker that went to Oregon State too?
Avery
Avery
Roberts.
Avery Roberts.
Avery
Roberts, yeah, he's looking good out there.
Tackles this year. Yeah.
As far as one of that stayed, I would have added Dedrick Mills in there.
Oh yeah,
Oh, Dedrick Mills.
He's the last running back to lead Nebraska in rushing yards.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah, well,
true.
Did Martinez beat out Ozigbo for rushing yards in 18?
No, but
I thought Zigbo had almost
Dedrick Mills came after Zigbo.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Scott, I think you nailed everything that, most of us already know. It's been a rough sled for 4 years. I remember for me, Juan and I were sitting on the couch watching his introductory press conference and literally holding back tears because, our boy's coming home, and I remember how much shit he got as a quarterback while he was here that he didn't deserve. So that's probably why I've been such an apologist for most of the 4 years. But, to be fair, I think the program's kind of been a little bit snake bit since that Akron game. When it got rained out, I thought, oh, crap, even God hates us now. So, and then you had the 0-6 start to 2018. We've lost every overtime game we've played that Frost has been here. The 2019 Colorado debacle, I'll never forget that. Couldn't find a decent kicker in 2019 after Pickering got hurt. Rumor has it, getting laid. 2020 Illinois debacle. Or 2021, that was 2020, the McCaffrey game. And our kicker that year was Big Ten Kicker of the Year, and then he couldn't find the middle of the uprights to save his ass starting this year. It's just been literal comedy of errors. To me, the mark of the Frost era, absolute mark of the Frost era, is self-destructing losses. Games basically won. Northwestern 2018, they come back from 14 freaking points or 10 points down and they beat us at the end of the game because we can't get out of our own way. That has been the mark of the Frost era. Though I will say this, at the very, very end of everything, the last thing we expected was Shenander's defense to be good. So I kind of give Frost a little bit of credit, and maybe just by pure luck, identifying a guy that's a pretty damn good defensive coordinator and is probably going to get himself a decent job somewhere in the next couple of years if his defenses don't fall apart. But anybody else got anything to say on the Frost era? I know Justin's got plenty, or Tyler, or.
Well, I think, Scott, you're going to get into some of the staff stuff, but when I think of the Frost era, I think it comes down to some critical mistakes he made early on. I think the decision to bring his whole UCF staff in retrospect was a mistake. They just weren't game enough. I think the way that he went into recruiting early on, he really wanted a tear down approach. I think his hubris about what his offense could be with the talent he had and the style of the Big Ten, these were all misfires. But Ken, to your point, since then, I've seen Scott Frost starting to make adjustments. I love what they've done for coaching staff going into 2022. but it's been comical the reason we just haven't gone over the mark. Like this year is a prime example. Like there's a reason why the one losses kept going, and that we kept talking about how we were really, really good. We just couldn't win games, and national media picked up on it. And I do take these as signs that the program is correcting, and Frost has kind of overcome some of his early mistakes, but it's been bad. It's been bad to start. I'm glad he's getting a leash long enough to fix it, because I do see the evidence that the wheels are turning that way.
So the evidence is having to fire half, or basically all of his offensive staff.
Well, I think that
that's a good thing.
The replacement of the staff with different coaches was redoing the mistake he made early on. I don't know if you listened when I said that was a mistake, but
the other
it
mistake
is,
was waiting 4 years to do it.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, if you were to just put into like one word describing the Frost era, and it has to be disaster, right? It's been a disaster, and the win-loss record aside, that's one thing. We all know how bad that is. We haven't finished better than 5th in the conference or in our division. Last year we finished dead last in the division. And then you look at the hires that he's had. He's headed into his 5th year. We're about to be on our 3rd offensive coordinator. The first 2 hires that he had just weren't the right guy, but he chose those guys. We're about to bring in our 4th different special teams coordinator in whatever capacity, whether it's a coach or analyst or whatever. Yeah, he's making better decisions hiring, but it's all because he's made such shitty decisions over the first 4 years.
Yeah, there's definitely
school of hard
some
knocks
truth to that. It's
and
it's hard to fault him for bringing his whole staff from UCF, because they caught lightning in a bottle and they did what they did in the 2 years that they were there. Part of me was kind of, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe he needs to get the grizzled old veteran to run his offense and his defense. But turns out Shenander was pretty good. I hear you. I wouldn't characterize it as disaster. I'd probably characterize it as floundering. This is what he's done for 4 years, especially on offense.
Well, it's like unclutch. Unclutch would be the word I would use.
Well,
Derek?
Scott, you were talking about all the wins that
Never mind.
Scott Frost has had, right? And whoever, the records. I mean, the key thing is 4 years of playing, and however many games that's been, 44 or whatever, 0 signature wins. How many other coaches out there? I mean, you look at Brett Bielema in his first year, he's got signature wins out there. I mean, there's people are getting signature wins all the time. It shouldn't be that hard to do. You shouldn't have to wait 4 years to even have a signature win. So all this progress, okay, we're playing within 1 score of good teams. Well, who do you freaking do? I mean, I don't know. It's been a disaster. There are signs that it's we want to think that with all the new hires that it's going to get better, and it can't get any worse. I think he's bringing in some great guys, so there's a little bit of promise there. But the last 4 years, it's just a disaster.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think what we discussed on the last live stream that we did together or something, I don't remember if it was post recording or something, but I truly believe that if we didn't have the COVID 2020 season, I believe that Ryan Held, Mario Verduzco, Matt Lubick, and Greg Austin would have been canned already, and we would have had a completely different coaching staff this year. But I think Frost, and like many other coaches, not to say that there weren't coaches that were willing to fire, or honestly head coaches getting fired throughout COVID, but I think that Frost felt a certain level of loyalty to his guys. Obviously, he's had loyalty to them for 4 years up to this point. And it took all the way to this disastrous season before he was willing to let go and cut the ties between his brotherhood that he had over at UCF. And I think that it's, he's making changes that have yet to pan out as good, but I mean, reading the writing on the walls with these coaching hires, I think we're going in the right direction, but we won't know until we actually see it come to fruition, and Lord knows if that'll even happen. But I'll just go through these the 7 assistant coaches in the last 4 years that we've gone through, and 4 of them obviously being fired in the last year. We had Troy Walters from 2018 to 2019 as our offensive coordinator, wide receivers coach. I mean, I loved the dude. I mean, his interviews, he was always an upstanding guy, but he just didn't pan out. And then Javon Dewitt, he was our outside linebacker and special teams coordinator from 2018 to 2019. Poor guy just was in bad health and ended up departing to go to North Carolina. So can't really blame the guy there. And then, then like we said, Ryan Held, Mario Verduzco, Matt Lubick, and Greg Austin, they're all gone. And then the only, out of these 7 coaches that we've had, only Tony Tuioti and Javon Dewitt have left on their own volition. So, and Tony Tuioti is the upstanding guy that I wish he didn't go to Oregon, but I wish him the best of luck there. And then, like you said earlier, Dad, that God, I think Frost would be gone already. He would have been gone years ago if we didn't have the defense that we did with Eric Shenander being our defensive coordinator, because he's pretty much been the cornerstone of our team, which is precisely the opposite of what Husker Nation expected after hiring Frost. And then I
think he's also been around because he's Frost.
Yep.
There is some privilege to being a former player. There really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know, but I'm just saying that there wasn't hardly anything to hold on to with Frost for these last 4 years, aside from the defense. There hasn't been any consistency in any room or any productivity in any room besides our defense collectively. And I mean, I guess I do got to give credit where it's due. Sean Beckton, I feel like, has done a pretty decent job at the tight end room when you consider the fact that we haven't actually seen a like spotlight on the tight end room in regard to game plan. But I think Sean Beckton has done a good job. He's been here. He's an OG. These are the OGs that I got. You got Eric Shenander, Sean Beckton, Mike Dawson, which, I mean, he technically went away to the Giants for a season, but then he came back. And then Travis Fisher and Barrett Ruud. Those are the guys that are still here and still doing pretty dang good work for the Huskers. But that's pretty much a reflection of our coaching staff. And it's been definitely down, but there have been some ups to look at. And it's just like what we said earlier, it's going to be, a pain in the butt next season if these coaching hires don't actually pan out. Frost will be gone. They will all be fired, and Eric Shenander will probably be one of the few guys that actually goes somewhere else and ends up successful, I hope. But that's kind of my coaching staff reflection. And I've talked about this before. This is the last point I wanted to make in regard to reflecting on the Frost era. It's the 2021 season anomaly of losing 8 games by 1 score or less, and only 1 game by more than that. And that was against Ohio State, where we lost by 9. This last 2021 season, if every single 1-score game in the entire college football landscape were flipped the other way, the most notable team that the college football subreddit were unanimously talking about was our beloved Scarlet and Cream. Because the East Division would have finished with Ohio State on top, being 11-11 or 11-1. And the West Division would have finished with Nebraska on top, being 11-1. And oddly enough, Alabama would have finished the regular season 8-4. But the playoff contenders through that rubric, I guess, it would be Pittsburgh at 10-2, Ohio State at 11-1, Nebraska 11-1, Cal at 9-2, Utah 11-1, and Georgia 11-1. Those would be the playoff contenders if that fantasy season of 1-score losses flipped the other way would have panned out. So that's just a fun little. It's fun. I don't know what fun really is, if that's my definition of fun, but it's just fun little fact to reflect on.
Well, overall, that's a depressing topic there to start out with, Scott.
You're welcome.
It is. But but we really should move on to the next one since we've got 5 more to go. Derek, what do you have on your mind tonight? What topic do you want to talk about?
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about the best returning position group on offense and defense. With offense, I went with wide receivers, and it was kind of by a process of elimination. We're not sure what's coming back running back. We know we're losing 3 out of our 5 starters on the offensive line. We really don't know what's coming in at quarterback as far as starting goes. And tight ends, you're looking at Travis Vokalek probably starting, but I'm not 100% sure that he's better than all of our wide receivers, I guess. So I went kind of with the process of elimination with wide receivers there. I do think Omar Manning showed a lot of potential. He did catch 6 of his 8 contested passes last year. Graded one of the highest in the PFF reception grade. You add in the Dakotas Crawford and Trey Palmer, and you get Xavier Betts involved more, and you got one of the best wide receiver coaches coming in to help them out. I mean, to me, wide receivers was the easy answer on offense. Defense was a little tougher, but I went with the linebacking core. Just if you want me to be a little more specific, I would say probably inside backers more than outside because they were having to replace less. But I went with the linebacker core as a whole. Man, you got Henrik and Reimert both coming back. One of them had 109 tackles. The other one had 99.
Yep.
Both had really good seasons. Garrett Nelson, I believe, I don't know if he finished number 1, but I know he was number 1 through most of the season for tackles for loss. I think he did end up getting passed towards the end of the season, but he was exciting. He also had 5 sacks. The linebackers excite me. The secondary is a little more scary, but the linebackers excite me for this coming up season.
All right.
Yeah, Derek, I was going to say that you and I are perfectly aligned here because that's what I wrote down as well. I wrote down wide receivers with Mickey Joseph coaching great talents like Xavier Betts, Omar Manning. I'm pretty high on Alante Brown, Oliver Martin's returning. And then, we've got LSU transfer Trey Palmer. And then I guess it's not really recent, but it's still recent enough. New Mexico transfer Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. He seems like a really good prospect for us. We could really have a deep wide receiving room, and that's not to mention our unproven talent behind them. I won't list off those names because you listed off a few of them, but I do think that Mickey Joseph could seriously provide a level of gameplay that we have yet to see in the Frost tenure.
I really think he's a game changer. I think
I do too. He's coached some really quality
around a lot,
talent.
I believe.
Derek, can I ask a question for you and Scott, actually? If it wasn't for the Mickey Joseph dynamic, would you still say wide receiver was going to be the best position group headed into 2022?
Probably. It's the only position we have with returning production.
Yeah, I would say that it's at that point, it's probably a coin flip between wide receivers and
running backs, right?
And running backs.
We probably have the most experience coming back on running backs.
Yeah,
we don't even know who's going to be
there's
playing.
a lot of experience. Really, I mean,
at least you have a general idea who's going to be playing with wide receivers. With running backs, you have no clue.
It's going to be about 3 guys, right? Ramir Johnson.
Thought that last year too.
Irvin's going to be in the mix now that he's healthy. Probably Gant or Step. Right? You can do an either or there.
And then we've got the transfers coming in too.
Yeah,
we got some good talent.
You know what, Derek? I'm with you too. I'm wide receiver. There's 13 guys in that room right now that all of them were recruited and were talked about quite a bit by Frost and company. I mean, you've got Manning, Betts, Lewer, Martin, Palmer, Castaneda, Jones, Victor Jones Jr.'s coming in. His dad was a beast in the NFL. Dakotas Crawford with the coolest name in college football. Alante Brown, Will Nixon, Camonte Grimes, Sean Hardy, Latrell Neville. I mean, there's a ton of dudes in that room that Joseph has to work with. My only concern with that position group is that there's a ton of guys in that room that Mickey Joseph has to work with, and how many of them are actually going to stick around if they're not going to see any playing time. But interesting note about Mickey Joseph, I read this the other day. He made all of his wide receivers at LSU catch 10,000 passes from Joe Burrow in the offseason. And then they went and won a national championship. So if
Did you guys know that Scott Frost didn't want Joe Burrow?
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
I
everybody
think
knows
I've
he
heard
didn't
that.
want Joe Burrow.
I think I've heard that before.
Is that breaking news?
And
Yeah.
do you
I heard
still
it
buy the
yesterday.
fact? And do you still really think that Joe Burrow changes
Man.
anything? With the offensive lineman strolled out there, you think Joe
I'm just
Burrow
absolutely
changes
shocked right now. I'm shocked.
To answer your question, Derek, yes. I think Joe Burrow, when you look at what he's done at the NFL level, like he is emerging as a top 5 quarterback. That's like saying, oh, I
with
wonder
a
if
good
Tom
offensive
Brady.
line in front of him. I'm not saying he's
But
not
not-
a good
Their
quarterback.
offensive line is trash in Cincinnati. That is
And
the
he's
number
still
one position they
producing.
need to draft. Now, yes, he has Jamar Chase, and that is the best offensive wide receiver. But yes, to answer your question, Joe Burrow does change it. However,
We should have got
there
him.
are a
We
lot
should
of
have got him.
teams. Okay, fine. But we had Adrian Martinez, we had Tristan Gibby at the time. Like, we didn't need a quarterback. We were kicking quarterbacks off the team at that point in time. Patrick O'Brien, who went on and started at Colorado State, which we left off. Like, we were kicking quarterbacks off the roster at that point. Like, no one knew Joe Burrow was going to be Joe Burrow. Like,
I apologize for bringing that up.
it's just,
It's all good.
That was
It's all
going to be a
good.
ha ha ha, and we all move on. I didn't think we'd debate.
It's all-
I've heard this a lot, like, of the thing. Of course, yes, hindsight's 2020. It'd be great if we would have brought in a top 7 NFL quarterback. It'd be great if like 108 picks didn't pass on Tom Brady. Like,
I
man,
also
we
don't
only
think
know
Mario.
now.
I also don't think Mario Verduzco could have turned Joe Burrow into one.
He would have
Yeah,
ruined him.
Yeah, put him under Mario Verduzco and see where he would have ended up. He would have ended up with 2 bad ankles and a fucked up knee. That's where he would have ended up. So
But yeah, defense.
but
Does
yeah.
anybody have any other comments about like defense?
mine's inside linebacker too. I'm right there with you, Derek. It's inside linebacker for me. Is
I
the
do
is the
too.
good position.
Who
How about
who
you, the rest
doesn't
of you
have
guys?
inside? Who doesn't have inside linebackers?
Well, I had linebacker and wide receiver as well, but like kind of thinking on it, our DBs could be a strength, I think, next year,
The
especially
talent
with
Best position group.
Farmer. Yeah, There's some guys
the
back
talent's
there.
there for it. I just don't.
The
know if
talent
the
is there.
experience is
Not
enough.
experienced though. Yep.
yeah. No, not a lot of
They
experience.
could
but
surprise us.
I was just trying to go outside the box a little bit because I had the same exact 2 positions groups, and I was thinking maybe why not the DBs, even though they're going to be young, but I think that they have the ability to step up and really make a mark on our team next year.
I think with the defense, I see your point, Chris, but inside linebackers, that's the obvious choice for defense. I think it does get interesting on the offensive side of the ball because you talk about the wide receivers, and there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of potential names. So if it was like which position group on offense has the most potential for next season, it's easily wide receivers. But the best headed into 2022, I think there's a good argument to be made that it is the running backs with all of their
And I don't understand
with
how
all
you're
their
making an
experience.
argument, considering you didn't even think we had a good running back on our damn roster.
They have the
Finishing
experience.
off the season.
If you look at the wide receivers last year, they were probably one of the more disappointing groups on offense with all the talent that we thought. Omar Manning wasn't great. Oliver Martin, he completely shit the bed, and we thought he was going to be.
Well, Oliver Martin got injured, and I think there's something to be said. I think to redirect Justin from the hate train he's on right now, I think a position we're not talking enough about is tight end.
Yeah.
You have Travis Vogel.
I
You
was
have
torn.
Thomas
The problem
Verdone.
is you're going off only potential with tight end.
Fair enough, but Thomas Verdone was a near 5-star. Chris Hickman has seen some meaningful snaps. You do have some guys there. And Vokalek, if you go back to what we thought he was going to be this year, 2020 he had a better year than he had in 2021. Injuries definitely derailed him, and the emergence of Austin Allen. You have Sean Beckton, I still think is one of our better coaches. I know everyone's high on Mickey Joseph, but I still like Sean Beckton. I think tight ends is in kind of that was my debate, would have been wide receiver, tight end.
I went back and forth between the two myself.
Yeah.
I really did. And I just went with wide receiver because I know there's 3 or 4 more guys on that side, on that position group that made plays last year. Our playmaker at tight end is gone. So Vokalek is good blocker. He's a good blocker. He's got good hands. the real reason I really like tight end is not only Thomas Fidoni's potential, but Chancellor Brewington. That dude can decleat some people. Have you seen those blocks he makes on the goal line? If we ever get down there, that dude goes out and just kills people.
If we ever get down there,
Well,
if we
he
ever
does.
get down there, yeah.
And I know everyone loves
Disclaimer.
Austin Allen, and they talk about him. I think he's a really good player, but there's a reason why he's probably not going to get drafted. Like, he's not like a transcendent talent. Like, you look at mock drafts, he's not listed, and he's good. He was a really good player, and we're going to miss him. But I think a lot of the scheme set
Wish
him
he'd
up
have
for
come back.
success. And yeah, I wish he would have come back. But yeah, maybe he ends up sneaking in. He does well in combines, but like, I just think at the end of the day, like, I think the scheme and the way we set him up, and I think Vokalek and Fidoni and a lot of the guys, I mean, you go down AJ Rollins, I think these guys can set up in a position where they can take snaps and have the similar process.
Yeah, I think my main reason for picking the wide receiving room, even though I think honestly, if you just look at our entire offense as a whole, we really can. It's very close in each room which one we could pick for our best position group, because it really honestly is based on potential, not really proven talent. And the reason why, I guess the main reason why I picked wide receivers is because of the tandem between Whipple and Joseph conspiring together. Because I think that Whipple can, no pun intended, whip up a really good offensive scheme that gets our quarterback or our wide receivers open for our quarterback to actually throw it to. And then I think Joseph can scheme with Whipple to really, really highlight the talent in that room. But that, once again, that's based on potential of Whipple and Joseph, not obviously proven, being able to prove it here yet, because they're all first-year coaches at Nebraska specifically. So that was probably one of the solidifying reasons why I picked wide receivers, is because of Whipple and Joseph conspiring together.
All right, I want to ask you guys each a question. I'll ask each of you. Who is our best player on offense headed into 2022? Scott, who would you say our best player on offense is?
Xavier Betts.
Xavier Betts. Okay. Derek?
I'd probably lean a little more towards Omar Manning.
Omar Manning. Tyler?
I'd go Omar Manning. If only we're going to have a topic about best players coming back, but that's
Do we?
fine. That's
No,
all
we
Big
don't.
Ten players? All Big Ten, all conference players?
You actually think, okay, is there going to be a guy on offense?
That's fine. Omar Manning is mine.
Okay, Chris?
I would be either on the Ramir Johnson or Casey Thompson are my two.
Okay.
Good. Ken?
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on Casey Thompson, to be honest with you, just because I think on our offense, and he passed for 10 more touchdowns than Martinez did last year, and he threw one less interception, and I think he had arguably just as crappy an offensive line in front of him as Adrian did. So, yeah, I'd put Casey Thompson in there if we get any kind of O-line play, which let's be honest, guys, that's the wild card in this entire upcoming season, is
Elephant in
a
the
offensive
room,
line
for sure.
coached by a guy in his very first job as a lead offensive line coach. So, but yeah, Casey Thompson would be mine.
Okay.
I think the benefit for Casey too is that our defense is probably going to be not top in the Big Ten, but it's going to be up there in the league. And he did not have a top defense with Texas whatsoever.
No,
I mean,
didn't.
he threw what, 5 or 6 touchdowns versus Kansas, and he still lost.
He threw 6 and he ran for 1.
Oh, that was what it was. Okay, yeah.
He still freaking lost. So yeah, that's bad defense.
Poor
there
son of a
in-
bitch.
in Horns land. So yeah, was there anybody else that hadn't answered that question yet?
No,
I think you asked it, Justin. Do you have a best player coming back?
The best player in 2022 on offense, it might be Ramir Johnson from what he can do catching out of the backfield. I mean, I don't know. I'm interested in that question because I don't think there's a lot of obvious choices out there. I mean, it's wide open. Omar Manning, I don't think Omar Manning, he didn't set the world on fire last year. Xavier Betts, I mean, I don't know what was going on with Xavier Betts. I think he was one of those guys that had a lot of potential, but sometimes they wouldn't even play him. You know, he wouldn't even see the field. So it was kind of a weird dynamic there with him.
Would you pick if you were to compare Ramir Johnson, a 100% healthy Ramir Johnson versus a 100% healthy Gabe Ervin? Would you still pick Ramir?
Oh, that's tough. I don't know.
That is tough.
Yeah, no, I think I would lean more towards Gabe for his
I'd
versatility.
almost lean toward Ervin over Thompson myself.
Did we ever get to see Gabe Ervin at his best, though?
Not really, but we saw it was close. He was kind of like the whole team.
He was this close?
He was like the whole team. We were this close to winning a lot of games
close?
last year, and he was this close to breaking some stuff. But yeah, I think, you know what? Here's what I say about the running back position and about guys that I think that could be really, really good. I think they've got a really good coach. They got a coach coming in that is going to make a difference, which for me, that's the group that needs to make the biggest jump in 2022. But that's your topic, Justin, so I'm not going to step on you too bad. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
So that is my topic. Which position group needs to make the biggest jump in 2022? So when I came up with this question, I thought it would be a unanimous decision. It'd be like offensive line. Offensive line was so piss poor last year to start off the season. They were like one of the worst Power 5 offensive lines in the country, and they improved to like maybe to be like the 40th worst offensive line.
Right.
And then, you know, and we're going to be losing our best offensive lineman, Cam Jurgens, at center.
Yeah.
And Matt Sichterman, which I think he probably has an argument to be made that he might have been our second best offensive lineman last year. You take those two guys out of there, I mean, it's going to be a huge challenge. And then for Casey Thompson didn't have a great offensive line at Texas. He struggled behind that. I mean, if we don't improve there, what makes you think that we can be successful again? The offensive line, that was a lot to attribute to why the running game didn't work. I mean, there's a shitload of reasons, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. But Ken, since you're different, I want to ask you, Ken, elaborate on your running backs.
Well, I think the running backs need to make the biggest jump because I think they need to take a lot of pressure off the quarterback. I mean, we're going into an offense that we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know if Mark Whipple is going to completely rely on Casey Thompson to go get those 3 yards on third down like it seemed like we did with Martinez all the freaking time, which is why he was always dinged up. So for me, running back has to be productive. And I know I completely agree with you. I would have gone offensive line if it weren't for the fact that we've seen potential all up and down our running back roster. And it seems like every year, 1 or 2 of those guys that have potential are leaving, like Savion Morrison and Marvin Scott did this year. So for me, when you've got a position group that produced a total of 1,329 yards on 301 attempts at 4.41 yards per carry average, and your quarterbacks produced damn near half of that, if not a little over half of that, that's scary to me. I think we need the running backs to be better. And that, of course, is going to depend on what Raiola does with the offensive line, right?
Yeah.
So the best running back we had last year, obviously, yardage-wise, was Ramir Johnson, 495 yards. He averaged right at 4.4 yards per carry. He was second on the team in rushing behind Martinez. I guarantee you, in a Whipple offense, Casey Thompson is not going to likely be our leading rusher. So there's some dudes in that room that need to absolutely step up. So I think Applewhite is definitely an upgrade at running back coach. I think he had his two running backs at TCU. In the 2 years he was there, they averaged over 7 yards per carry the 2 years he was there. So, and he's got that Ron Brown mentality, that get after it, get mean, don't mess around, attack the day every day. And he played fullback in college. So who knows? Maybe Whipple likes to run some I. So maybe you see Yant jump in there at an I formation, or maybe Whipple likes some of the stuff that Tim Beck did back in the day, and you see some of them talented running backs surrounding Casey Thompson in that diamond or triangle formation or whatever the hell that was pretty productive under Tim Beck. So I and they really need to average about 200 yards per game at that position in order to take a lot of pressure off the passing game and keep a lot of that stuff out of Casey Thompson's face. And like you said, though, all starts up front.
Yeah.
But I think behind that offensive line, you've got to have some dudes that aren't afraid to stick their nose up in there and get it bloodied. So
Chris, how
running
about
back-
you? Which position group?
I have to go with the offensive line because that's where everything starts. You know, if we can have a good offensive line, our running backs are going to have holes to get to wherever they need to be. Casey Thompson's going to be able to pass with a clean pocket, and I think things will roll, you know, smoothly with a very strong offensive line. I mean, just imagine having a 200-yard per game rusher. You know what I mean? It would just change everything for Nebraska, I think, you know, getting back to the roots of the 90s in a way, you know, getting like maybe kind of like the Ahman Green or Lawrence Phillip days, you know, where they were
Stop
just
trying to go back to the 90s, damn it.
trucking.
We need those.
All right,
we need those
I'll go Mike Rozier then. He
Just
averaged
go to the
7.3 through his whole career. How about that?
Yeah.
Let's get into the
Yeah,
60s
exactly.
now.
Yeah.
Derek,
I just want to add into a little bit what you were talking about, Justin. Nebraska ranked 126 out of 130 teams in pass block when it comes to the PFF grades. Like our pass block was atrocious. It was terrible. The next worst team was Iowa, who was ranked 101st.
really?
Yeah. That is the Big Ten.
Still
That was the closest Big Ten team to us.
Okay.
I did not know that.
Good burn on Iowa.
I want to talk to Ken a little bit about. He was talking about Adrian Martinez leading the team in rushing again. Well, according to PFF, Adrian Martinez scrambled for 415 yards. Scrambled.
Yeah.
That means his offensive line wasn't doing their damn job. This had
Yeah.
nothing to do with the offensive staff relying too much on Adrian Martinez. It had to do with the fact the offensive line wasn't blocking for him. He had to make something out of nothing. He had
Well, I
500.
feel
He had
properly
525
chastised.
total
Thank
rushing yards. He had 525 total rushing yards. 415 of them came on scrambles.
And if our offensive line didn't suck so bad, he wouldn't have all those yards.
Nope.
Jeez.
You're
Ramir
right.
probably would have.
But he also probably has more passing yards. He probably looks better overall. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just the offensive line also accounted for 27 of the 37 offensive penalties that we had. And Tyler, you roll your eyes, but how many of those were drive killers? How many times did we get a holding call and all of a sudden you could just well punt it away because you know we ain't going anywhere after that?
Well, Dirk, I don't disagree with you. You're right that they were killers. I rolled my eyes because I think, well, who else is going to commit offensive penalties? Like false starts are holdings are offensive line. I mean, most offensive penalties are offensive line. I feel like that's the quarter. How many offensive penalties you see on a quarterback? Not many.
Probably more than we should have with intentional groundings in the end zones.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh,
That's those hurt. Anybody
That
else
hurts.
got anything on that topic? I think everybody else is probably going to be offensive line, right?
Well,
I mean,
I went a little bit against the grain, but it is still a tie in my idea of position group that needs to make the biggest jump. And I had a tie between special teams and offensive line because both of those position groups will need a shit ton of work. But if I were to pick between the two, which one I'm more confident in changing, it would be special teams taking a jump with a historically proven Bill Bush taking the first special teams coordinator position in the Frost era, whoop-de-doo, and less confident in the unproven Donovan Raiola taking over our offensive line. The reason why I think special teams is probably where I lean a little bit more towards is just because of how many points we left on the field that just didn't result in victories. If we would have been able to just be even slightly better at our punting, we would have won against Michigan State. If we would have been better at kicking field goals, we would have won a couple other games. Like just those tiny little minute details, I think go a long way would I rather see our offensive line improve? Like if I had to pick between, both staying stagnant, like if special teams stayed the exact same way and offensive line made a huge jump, I would pick offensive line because I think we can work a little bit with that. But I'm picking strictly off of what group could make the most improvement. And I think special teams does, especially with Montana transfer punter Brian Buschini, which I think it's kind of cute that we've got Brian Busch-ini with Bill Bush. So, they're the Bush brothers. They need some Bush lights on the field at all times.
We've got Bush.
So
yeah, I was just going to say.
I want that shirt.
I gotta say, you just hit on one of my biggest pet peeves in the world, and the Cousins know this. And if you listen to the Cuzcast, you know this. Is by saying we finally have a special teams coach. We've had special teams coaches. By him not being a solo guy doesn't mean we haven't had them. And if you say, well, that doesn't count, well, then Alabama, Penn State, Michigan, Illinois, FSU, Clemson, Auburn, none of them have special teams coaches. And it's not
we
like
didn't have one in 2020, Tyler.
We had 1 year we didn't have one. And it's not like people this year are going to say, well, why don't you have a quarterback coach? I mean, you have an offensive coordinator / quarterback coach. I mean, people do dual duties all the time in college football. That pet peeve of mine, like,
I know.
Ever hired a special teams coach?
And my pushback for that is, as you try and navigate through life, if there's an area where you struggle precipitously, you have to get a specialist in that area. Like if you struggle immensely on special teams, you have to make an immense effort to change that area. Yes, there are other teams that have dual purpose coaches that do a multiplicity of responsibilities, but it's because for whatever reason at that time, the framework that they're working with is working. And so they can afford to get those dual duties. And this is the first special teams solo coordinator that we've had with Frost. And that alone for me, I think is important because we have struggled so poorly on special teams that we needed to actually set aside one area for one guy to do one job that hasn't been done.
And
job that hasn't been completed.
I will agree with you there, right? I think that is a very valid point. Like that, the fact that he is emphasizing this enough to say, we have one guy that's the only thing I want you to do, Bill Bush, is make us not suck ass at special teams. Please just don't make us lose games because of this.
I think it'll change.
I do think that matters.
I think it will change. Like if let's say we start to get really successful on special teams, or at least get somewhere in the middle of the pack, I very well could see some more reorganizing of the coaching staff where we can take a responsibility and put it on Bill Bush's plate or remove a responsibility from someone else. I don't know. But right now, I think the primary focus that we need to have is have one guy look at a whiteboard and only have one topic that he needs to focus on so that our guys can get focused in on one thing and one thing alone from one guy. Just like that alone for me is important. Could have we done without it? Sure. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so we've got to do something to break against that grain. And I think that Bill Bush could help us. We don't know, but I think he has a good potential to do so. And I know we've had good special teams recruits in the past that haven't panned out, but I mean, this could be the same thing with the Montana punter and the Furman kicker, Timmy. I like his name, Timmy. Timmy.
Big Road. BLEEKRODE. That's a weird ass name. Hope he can kick a football.
Yep. So that's just
culpable in any losses, maybe.
Culpable. Oh, speaking of special team stuff, I got a pair of shoes from Lane McCollum. So that's kind of cool. I got a pair of Adidas high tops from him. The guy who kicked the game-winning field goal against Northwestern,
wasn't it? 2019.
Yeah, that got blocked, but it still went through.
How'd you get those?
He was selling them on Facebook. He was selling them on Facebook. He was selling a bunch of merchandise post graduation, and I freaking love Adidas high tops. I gotta flex these for a moment. Check out these fucking bad boys. Look at them.
Dude.
Hey, the team might suck, but at least they had cool looking kicks.
Yeah. So I dropped a little bit more money than I would have wanted to, but
Are you gonna wear them?
oh yeah, I'll wear them once, at least once.
And he's probably going to come on our podcast somewhere between now and
Yes.
the
Lane
start of the
McCollum is
season,
actually
so
going to probably. He
We'll
said
see
he's
if we
down
can-
for it, so
see if we can dig into some of the culture or whatnot in the program. I mean, I don't want to betray any kind of locker room, brotherhood
Pacts.
and that kind of stuff. But
unspoken rules.
anyway,
Hey, add me in on the post-show conversation.
okay, yeah, we can do that.
Very
Shoot,
well.
we might just include you on the whole show conversation. How's that sound?
Awesome.
We are not recording, so
Let's see.
everything you say is going to be
Yeah.
between us. We won't Twitter
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Nothing.
This is
No
completely off the
insider
record,
sources.
Lane.
Like pinky promise.
Oh man! So I think everybody has gone on that topic, haven't we?
Biggest
Yeah.
Derek.
Ken, you're up.
I
was
am.
gonna-
Woohoo! What will Casey Thompson's impact be in 2022? That's my topic tonight. I think in the Whipple offense, he has the potential of leading Nebraska to 6 to 8 wins, mainly because of the Shenander defense. He did not have a Shenander defense at Texas, obviously, as the Oklahoma game and the Kansas game proved. I also think he has the potential to equal Martinez in passing yards this season, and has the athleticism to at least use his legs if he needs to. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of called runs for Casey Thompson. Hell, I'm not even sure we're going to run all that much option with him. And I know Frost seems to really like that. But for me, for 2022, with Whipple, with hopefully a better running game, I think he can throw for about 2,600 to 2,800 yards. Martinez threw for just over 2,800, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that Casey could throw for 26 to 2,800 with around 25 TDs and possibly 8 to 10 interceptions, which seems like that's what we do around here anyway. So, and according to OU insider and former quarterback Dean Blevins, Casey Thompson is a high character kid. He gets the respect of his teammates, and he is very well liked by his coaches. And in the running back, and if the running back room can produce that 1,700 to 2,000 yards in 2022, then I think Thompson could have a really good year, especially in the play action game. What do you guys think? How about you, Tyler? What do you think on Casey?
Well, I'm high on him. I think he can be very successful here in Lincoln. I will say though, I don't know if it's 100% he is our starter game one.
Right.
I think we've got guys that can compete. Chuba Purdy was just on campus. He would make the room a little bit more interesting if he ends up committing. I do think he is a pretty solid front runner. And I think he's a huge get. He is a guy that I could see being a catalyst of major forward-looking changes at Lincoln. Kind of getting us back to that, not just relevant, not just the 6 to 8 mark, and maybe that's the target this year, but maybe he's a guy that can get us to that 9-10 win mark again. And I think he is that type of talent because everything we've talked about, like he isn't the reason they lost a couple of those games in Texas. He put up big stats there. I think he's a home run get. I'm aligned there.
How about you, Justin?
He's a
Swallow
fine
bourbon.
get. He's a fine get. I mean, I don't know how great I don't know how much improved he's going to be over Martinez over the long haul. I mentioned this on the podcast last week. He didn't even win the starting position at Texas until the third game. He got beat out by a second-year freshman. He was a fourth-year guy coming into the program last year. He got beat out by a second-year freshman. Hudson Card was his name. He played fine. He really struggled in the second half. He put up some good numbers, but he struggled in the second half. He got benched twice last year against Iowa State and West Virginia. Had Hudson Card not been injured when he came in for relief of him in West Virginia, I mean, Hudson Card probably would have started their final game. He played against a lot of teams in the Big 12. The Big 12 isn't known for defense. 5 of the teams that he played against, they were ranked 80th or below in total defense. 3 of those teams, including Kansas, they were ranked 100 or below. So when he comes to the Big Ten and Nebraska, he's still going to have an offensive line that is trying to figure shit out. He's going to play against a hell of a lot of better defenses than what he saw there. A new system. I mean, he was a 4-year guy finally getting his chance to start. And now he's going to come in with 1 year or half a year to learn a whole new offense. I'm with Tyler. I mean, it's like there's no guarantee that he is going to start. And if he does, is he going to be that much better than the guy that we had before? And I'm not so sure. Everybody likes those 24 touchdowns and 9 interceptions that he had. But, he had 6 touchdowns against Kansas, and then he had 5 touchdowns against 2 other teams. Oklahoma was included, which is fine. But they damn near choked in that Oklahoma game because they couldn't score in the second half. So I don't know. I mean, he was probably the best quarterback that Nebraska was going to be able to get out of the transfer portal. I mean, that's just where we were. So, I mean, he best available. I'm not sold on him. Tyler saying, boo, Justin. Come on, man. I mean, I don't mean to piss in your Wheaties, but I mean, it's true. I mean, everybody that's like thinking that he's going to be the savior of the program, they're just like drinking way too much Kool-Aid and they're not being realistic. I mean, he's a fine get, not a great get.
Devil's advocate. Got to keep it.
He wouldn't be happy if we were bringing in Patrick Mahomes.
Justin he'd be like, you remember that interception? I mean, he didn't earn the starting job day one in Kansas City. I mean, geez, nope. It's not really. I mean, how could you go for him, right?
He got benched in his second to last game at Texas. Got benched.
He was injured. I know that injuries don't matter. I know injuries don't matter unless it's a
6-7 weeks.
Yeah,
before.
he was literally playing with a thumb that could barely grip the football. He adjusted,
but that happened in Oklahoma.
For the rest of the season.
He played
swollen.
But it was
so. How do you know he didn't re-injure it?
And they still thought that he was a better option than Hudson Card, who had a healthy thumb, because he was hurt.
Scott Frost played a guy with a broken jaw over our backup. I mean,
yeah, exactly my point.
You don't need your jaw to throw.
Do you think our backup was better?
And we just
I'm
do
not
clap
sure Logan
cadence
Smothers would have got us any more than 3 and 9.
I mean, hey, hopefully I'm wrong. But I haven't been wrong the last 4 years. So.
Well, here's what we've got. We've got competition in the room, at least, that's beyond just, a 4-year dude that's been there that's just going to be automatically anointed the starter. At least there's going to be 3 guys that are really going to have to fight for the position. I don't think he was promised to start. I think he was promised a lot of money from Casey's convenience stores. But I don't think he was promised to start.
Is that true? Is that what? Does he have an NIL deal?
No, but I think there's a pretty good chance that he walks into a Casey's and does a commercial and say, "Come here where I shop," kind of deal, and makes $1 million over the next year. So
their breakfast pizza sucks, by the way.
Oh God, most of their pizza sucks unless you get it absolutely fresh right out of the oven, and then you're willing to suffer 3rd-degree burns inside your mouth.
Scott's a big fan of the breakfast pizza, I see.
No, I just like their pizza. Their breakfast pizza does suck donkey balls, but the regular pizza is good.
I'm not a fan of breakfast pizza, period, but their pizza.
Yeah. Hy-Vee's breakfast pizza is good.
Dude, you guys are insane. Breakfast pizza is the best pizza, especially when they put gravy as the base.
Sauce.
Come on,
don't tell them to put cheese. Tell them to put the breakfast gravy on it.
Chris, your beard is way too big to be eating a lot of gravy, okay?
I mean, it don't matter.
Save it for later.
Save it for later, baby.
Yeah, buddy.
That's right. Way too. Yeah, okay.
Late morning
well, all
snack.
right. Now that we've gone completely down that road, anybody else got anything on Casey Thompson?
Well, I just hope that he can at least provide a clutch mentality in Justin said, I mean, we don't really have a very good resume for his second half gameplay, but if at the very least he can provide a clutch mentality to secure the final few minutes of each game, like that would be a monumental improvement.
And he wasn't clutch at Texas. I mean, he sucked in the second half in at least 3 games.
Yeah, that's kind of the part that I was worried about, but we won't know until we see it. Because I think that was the Achilles heel of our offense.
Yeah,
you can't really put it all on Martinez, but you kind of
Right.
can when he was the choke meister, the most unclutch quarterback I've ever had the pain of watching. And we're just going to have to see. And I think if anybody can tap into Thompson's bag of tools and extract the highest level of potentiality, Mark Whipple, he could probably do it. But
He's
we're
got
not
what,
gonna
2
know.
years to work with them.
Yeah.
Casey's coming in
Hopefully,
for 2, right?
hopefully, because Mark Whipple, he needs at least 2 years to work with Casey Thompson.
Yeah, he needs. If we can go 6-6, which we'll get to that, but yeah.
So Chris
I
hasn't
have
gone yet.
I had one thing to add for it or whatnot.
Yeah, Chris, go
The
ahead.
unfortunate truth is that Nebraska is not in the realm of getting these top quarterbacks. So, in a way, I think Casey Thompson is maybe the bin that we're in, and it's not a bad bin to be in. I think Casey Thompson can be a good player, especially with some of the games he did have. Yeah, they were against subpar defenses, but he at least has the vision to get these wide receivers and running backs the ball. I think he might be a little bit more of an improvement than Adrian Martinez in terms of turnovers as well. I kind of did a tally on Adrian Martinez, and over his career, he had 50 plus turnovers at Nebraska. So I think Casey Thompson will be a little bit of an improvement. Is he much more of an improvement? I'm not sure, but I think he is an improvement over Martinez.
We will find out.
I have one bold prediction. This is my bold prediction based on no facts. It's only based on me just wanting to be spiteful. I predict that Casey Thompson leads us to victory on 2 different game occasions, on 2 different game-winning drives, which is 2 more than Martinez ever had.
Cheap shot, Scott. Cheap shot.
Adrian had a couple of game-tying drives, but he never had a game winner, and that sucks. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up that topic. Let's see here.
Tyler.
Who's next? Is Tyler next with the returning potential all Big Ten candidates? That's how I made my list, was based on potential.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't think we have a returning all Big Ten guy. So, I mean, obviously, this is a big conversation. Who are going to be our stars next year? Who are going to be the guys that are going to make us relevant on the conference level? And I know Shenander's gotten a lot of praise for defense, and I do think that's where a lot of these guys are going to pop up again. So the way I look at this is I'm not counting transfers. I'm not counting Casey Thompson. I'm talking about guys that played at Lincoln last year that are returning. If you guys want to throw in a brand new guy, go. I don't care. But there's a few names that came to mind, and it kind of starts with the inside backers. I think both of our inside backers really have a shot. Both of them were top 10 in tackles in the Big Ten last year. In the case of Reimers, he caused the second most fumbles. I think both of them are in for really good capacity. The only thing that might hurt them is the return of Will Honus. And it sounds really, but they might just lose some snaps this year. So maybe both of them. And then I had 2 more names I had written down. And then I have 3 more names written down. Garrett Nelson, Ty Robinson, and then Omar Manning. Now, Omar Manning, I'm putting in there because I do think we're going to pass more. I think we are going to be more of a passing team, and someone's got to catch those balls. Is it Xavier Betts? Is it Trey Palmer? Right now, I am going Omar Manning. I think that I know Justin likes to say, well, he didn't have the year he expected. He had 380 yards receiving. I think that is a pretty solid year for wide receivers at Lincoln. Like, go back and look at how many wide receivers in Lincoln have caught more than 350 yards passing in the last half decade. That list is really small. So I do expect him to be that guy that can step up. Does he get to all conference? I don't know, but I find it interesting that I had 4 guys on defense, and in spite of that, I think our offense is going to be better than our defense. I just think it's going to kind of, just like our offense was better than our defense this year. Our offense was number 2 in the Big Ten. Our defense was 6th. So like our offense was better than our defense again this year. But I think it's going to be kind of similar where it's going to get spread around. Not so much one position. So that was my list. Anybody that I missed? Anybody you guys think that I'm crazy about? Chris, I'll start with you.
I think that list is fine, but I would add in probably one of the running backs, either Ramir or Gabe, and then maybe I could see Farmer stepping up because what was it? It wasn't last year. I think he had a couple interceptions last year, but the year he got hurt, he was on a pretty good pace that year too. He had three interceptions that year. So I'm going to put Farmer and one of the running backs for my 2 guys.
I'll grant you Farmer, but whenever your thing is, I'm going to get one of the running backs that is not an answer. I need a name. You got to tell me what name is going to make all conference.
Okay. I'll go with Farmer and I'll go with Johnson.
Okay. That's fair.
Okay.
You talking Emmett Johnson?
Ramir Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Emmett, and you know what? Dark horse right there. Anybody that I'm missing? Anybody else that you would throw? Anybody like?
Well,
what about Ty Robinson? Was that a stretch?
I've got Ty Robinson listed. I've also got Caleb Tanner listed, and as potential, I have Quentin Newsom, and like you did, Miles Farmer, Luke Reimer. I also have Xavier Betts listed as somebody who's under Mickey Joseph. If there's a dude that's got the potential that can have it be extracted by a dude that's going to coach him hard, I think it's Xavier. I think he responds to that pretty well. His coach in Omaha was pretty hard on him. Teddy Prohaska, I could see him as an honorable mention All Big Ten player on the offensive line. Maybe Thomas Fedoni as a breakout player for the Big Ten or something at tight end. In the Whipple offense, if we're going to be 52 to 55% pass to run ratio, I could see the tight ends sticking out a little bit, and Fedoni's just got all the athleticism in the world. So those are the guys I have in mind. How about you? Anybody else?
I would put Noeli in there before I would Prochaska. Noeli was one of the highest rated, according to PFF, was one of the highest rated offensive linemen we had.
Okay.
And so I think with his rating, I thought he did a good job. Like, he only allowed 5 pressures all year. I mean, granted, he didn't start as much. He didn't play quite as much as some of those other guys. But we had 159 pressures. 99 of those came from the tackles.
Oh, yeah. And almost all of them came from Corcoran's side. So,
I mean,
the only reason I picked out Prohaska is because Aiden Hutchinson was basically neutralized in the Michigan game when Prohaska was in there. And then when he went out, the first thing that happened, Ben Hart gave up, a sack or a tackle behind the line of scrimmage?
Yes,
So,
but if you'll remember, after that, he settled down and graded out pretty high after that game.
He did. But Aiden had nothing for the first half of that game until he got hurt. Until Prohaska got hurt late in that second quarter, early third quarter, whatever it was. I don't know. I was in Arizona. So my brain was baked and the beer was cold. So anybody else got anything on all returning Big Ten candidates on offense or defense that we haven't mentioned?
I just have to say this because we talked about this before this past year, how hard it is to get a wide receiver on the All Big Ten team.
Yep. Because
the All Big Ten teams, they only do 2 wide receivers on the team. So you have to be in the top 6 in the conference to hit that team. So, you hear names like Omar Manning and Xavier Betts. I mean, you're putting those guys top 6 in the conference when you say things like that. So that's a
And
really tall order for those guys.
And you always know that at least 3 of those 6 guys are going to be from Ohio State.
Well, see, this year 3 of those guys. I think that this year was a really bit weird anomaly in the Big Ten. Like, I mean, David Bell, the Ohio State wide receivers. I mean, I think that those were guys that you earmarked going into 2021. Like, well, those are going to be special players. I don't think the Big Ten is loaded at wide receiver near at the level as it was in 2022 or 2021. I
mean, the 2 guys that were mentioned, Xavier Betts and Omar Manning, I'm not even sure if either of those 2 guys are going to be leading Nebraska in receiving yards. I mean, I think our guy, IGC,
IGC, yeah.
We're talking. We called him IGA on our last podcast.
I know. I was laughing too. I was laughing a lot.
IGA. Isaiah Garcia Castanado, man, that dude. I think he can come in, and I think he can take over the role of Samori Toure and really lead the team in receiving yards over the other 2 guys. I just think that Omar Manning might have maxed out at what his potential level is at Power 5 football.
Could be. You never know. Does anybody have anyone on special teams at all that maybe makes the list?
Well,
hey,
I mean,
I'm a big.
I was gonna say Trey Palmer.
Palmer. I'm a huge
TP
fan of him.
Well, because the last time he returned a couple of touchdowns back on punt and a kickoff return was when Bill Bush was his special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
I threw Brian Buschini on the list just because maybe we'll get a guy that can average 40 plus, and who knows, if he gets the wind at his back, he might crank off a couple of 84 yarders instead of one, like what was his name, Pristip, or however the fuck you say it, Derek.
My marker of success, if we get all Big Ten candidates, is honestly just going to be if we have a winning record. I think that will bode well for any of the guys that we've mentioned, because I've got pretty much the same names as all of you guys have mentioned: Luke Reimer, Nick Henrich, Garrett Nelson. I did put Xavier Betts, but yeah, you did highlight a good point that there's only 6 of them that can be selected, and there's a wide pool of wide receivers to be looked at. And then I put a split between Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson if they have a breakout season. But I really think for Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich and Garrett Nelson, those are probably my top 3. And a winning record for the Cornhuskers is really going to bode well for them getting those votes. And if they have, a good season, and with Will Honus coming back for like the 7th year, he's got to be here for 8-9 years now. He's got to have his own LLC started up at this point.
His daughter's going to graduate 8th grade graduation next year.
Holy crap!
Right.
No, I'm making that shit up. I'm sorry.
I was like, what? What?
Hey.
He would have had to have a kid when he was like 11.
The University of Nebraska as a freshman.
But yeah, that was my only thought, was winning record being a huge player in that.
Well, I think we have covered that topic pretty well, have we? Or anybody else got anything that that hasn't been mentioned? John Fielder, undefeated 2022. Yeah, he's been drinking the same bourbon you are, Justin, clearly.
Yeah, there's no alcohol in his.
Okay. Wow. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be impressed by that or not. I think we're down to you, Chris. Why don't you share with us what's on your mind for a topic tonight?
So my topic was where would you like to see Nebraska record-wise be at for Scott Frost to retain his job going into the 2023 season? And I think at minimum, because of the schedule that we have, I mean, we have Wisconsin, Oklahoma, and Iowa, I think, as our let's see, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Michigan, right? As our, I think, top 4 hardest teams that we're going to play next year. I would say minimum 8-4, really. For me, yeah, you have to make the bowl game as well, or whatever. At 8-4, that's possible, but I think 6-6 might not do it for them, in my opinion.
Really?
I don't know what you guys. Well, I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think 6-6 is going to be enough.
Here's where I'll disagree with you. This is the only reason I'll disagree with you on this. It's the coaching changes. With Trevor Albertson allowing him so much room to move so much with the coaching changes, I think that gives him a little more opportunity for room. Whereas if he had kept his staff, then I think you're absolutely right. But
yeah,
with him allowing so many different coaching changes, I think it broadened his leash a little bit there.
Okay.
Well, I'm in the camp of saying that minimum he has to go 6-6. Minimum for him to keep his job. He has to go 6-6. We have to go to a bowl game. To me, that's not good enough. I'm not exactly going to be thrilled if we're 6-6 because I think this team has the potential based on the way the schedule lays out and because Oklahoma, you don't know what the hell you're going to get from Oklahoma this year at all. They're down their top 2 quarterbacks. Rattler's gone. Williams is gone. They brought in Dylan Gabriel from UCF. We all know how good bringing guys in from Group of 5 to Power 5 and expecting them to perform at a Power 5 level has worked out for us the last 4 years. So
don't make us the barometer of success.
Exactly. We shouldn't be the barometer. You're exactly right. Here's the thing.
I like what John just said.
Yeah. It's hard to lose.
Hard to lose 4 when you're winning all of them.
Yeah.
Smartest person in that family.
I want that Kool-Aid, baby.
He is the smartest person in that family. I'll tell you that.
He makes his Kool-Aid with vodka, Chris. Trust me.
Oh man.
We got Northwestern in Dublin. We should win that. We got North Dakota. We don't go on the road until Rutgers after our first bye week. Because after they reshuffle the schedule and all that stuff, we're going to be literally in Lincoln for 41 days after the game in Ireland. So there's no reason Nebraska shouldn't be at least 5-2 going into the last 5 games of the season. Then again, I'm of the opinion that the last time I predicted something, the Nebraska did the exact opposite. We are perfectly capable of also going 2-5 based on the first 4 years of Frost. But for me, if we're 5-2, 4-3 or something after 7 games, there's no reason we can't knock out a couple of wins in those last 5 games and at least go 6-6. I also think 8-4 is possible. It's possible, but I think that's our ceiling for 2022.
I think if we go undefeated going into Oklahoma and we beat Oklahoma, I think 8-4 is definitely possible.
Oh yeah. I think our schedule this year is honestly just incredibly favorable in comparison to previous years, and it's probably the best schedule we've had given to us during the Frost era. And like my dad said, in the first 6 games, we get 4 of them at home, and then one of them is in Ireland, and then the other is at Rutgers. Right after we have Indiana come to Lincoln, we finally go to our first away game in Rutgers in week 7. But ultimately, I think we do have to have, at the very least, a 4-2 record by the halfway point of the season. And Derek, you mentioned something that I hadn't thought about, so thank you. It kind of changed my perspective just a little bit, that I didn't think about with how much coaching changes that Frost has done so far. I think you're right. It did increase his leash a little bit, that if he would have kept his same coaching staff, he would definitely have to go 8-4, which is what I wrote down. I think he would need to get an 8-4 to keep his job. But with the coaching changes, I think he could very well get a 7-5 or a 6-6, and he could continue coaching. But honestly, I think no matter what, if we go to a bowl game and we find a way to lose, I think Frost could very easily get fired if we're only 6-6 or 7-5 and we lose a bowl game against somebody that in all reality we should beat.
I'll disagree with you on one aspect of that. In today's world, you don't really make a decision off the bowl game anymore. If you're going to fire him, you're going to fire him long before that bowl game happens.
That is a
I
good
agree
point.
with that.
That is how the culture has changed quite a bit.
I'm going to agree with Derek also. When Scott Frost enters 2022, to save his job, he just needs to show progress in whatever metric is decided. And I think 4 wins or maybe 5 wins will get him another year. But I think that schedule, although it looks easier, there's a good possibility that Nebraska could possibly go 0-6 in the final 6 games.
I think if that happens, Frost is gone.
Yeah, in that scenario, I think you're right.
Even if we're 6-0, we finish out 0-6. I think he's probably gone.
Oh,
I don't think that back half
that would
is
be
that tough. I mean, there's some tough games.
That'd be a bad luck.
But
yeah, because
you
it's really the last 3.
You lose again to Illinois. You lose again to Purdue.
You lose again to Minnesota.
Bad. Yeah.
So for the listeners out there or the people watching, the final 6 games of next year is at Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those last 4 games are
at
tough.
Michigan.
Can I just pause you there?
Iowa.
Like, you're making it sound like that is so daunting of a schedule. Like,
but it has been over the last
Illinois,
4 years.
Well, yes, and if the last 4 years repeat itself, then we're going to win 3 or 4 games, and it's a moot point. Like, I mean, you're acting like, well, Illinois, we should be scared of. Like it. I get it. They beat us 2 years in a row. I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, if we're losing to Illinois, he's probably going to get fired anyway. Like, I don't know why you think we're going to win the first 6 games if we think we're going to lose to Illinois. Like, is Illinois that team that, like, well, Rutgers would get their asses beat by Illinois. Purdue would get ran out Purdue would just destroy Indiana. Like, why do you think that we're going to win those games but then lose to those teams? Like, that's what I don't understand about the last 6 argument.
Here's a good thing to think about, or a terrible thing to think about, depending on your perspective on it, is Frost's win-loss record after a bye week. He has yet to win a game after a bye week. Scheduled, I think he won after a bye week, but I think it was only because of COVID, so it wasn't a scheduled bye week.
Chris is saying he's won 2 of them.
No, we have 2 buys this year.
Yes, we do, and we have a bye week, and then we have Indiana at home right after that bye week, and then we have another bye week, and we have Illinois at home. So Illinois was an absolute dumpster, or not Illinois. Indiana was an absolute dumpster fire this year. Didn't win a single Big Ten game, and facing them at home after a bye week, after let's say best case scenario is a motivating win against OU. Nothing would be more Nebraska-like and Frost-like to just get housed at home by Indiana after a bye week, and then somehow we pull off a win at Purdue, and then we get housed by Illinois again. Like, that would just be terrible.
The reality is we're going to be starting a brand new offense, new offensive coordinator, brand new coaches. And with the way that the transfer portal has been going, there's going to be a lot of new faces that are going to be in that offensive lineup. Mm-hmm. I mean, just being new to everything that we're introducing. I mean, what are the odds that all of a sudden that after all these years and you bring all these changes, it clicks right away? Yeah. There's going to be some hiccups,
which is why the Northwestern game scares me. I mean, Northwestern.
Oh yeah,
they don't normally have 2 bad years in a row. Like everyone's predicting them to be a 4-win team, which means they're probably due for a 9-win season.
They're probably right, but they never start off well.
I know. Nebraska, Scott Frost hasn't started off the first.
I'm not saying
well.
that, and it wasn't even part of the equation there. I'm just saying that with what Tyler's saying. Northwestern never starts off well either.
And they get.
Did Northwestern lose their quarterback too?
Well, which quarterback? I mean, Hunter
Johnson
the
left.
Starter.
But
but I don't
Peyton
know.
Ramsey. Not
Peyton
what's
Ramsey.
his name?
I don't know. But to the question at hand, I obviously we need to see progress. I think that's the question. I hate the wins-loss thing because I don't know, like this year, if you had told me Scott Frost was going to go 3-9 and kept his job,
keep his job,
year, I would have been like, well, in order for that to happen, you would have probably had to see an unprecedented like win-loss, like one score possessions. It had to be the most flukish season in history,
and losing your quarterback,
and it happened, Like so, like when you start talking about this, like in year 5, I'm like, well, I don't know. Like an 8-win season, he could get fired off at 8 wins. If all 4 losses come late in the year and they're all blowouts, then yeah, maybe he gets fired. Could he keep his job on a 6-6 record? Sure, if they're all really competitive losses, the wins and losses happen at the right timing. Like, yeah, I mean, these things could happen. So, like, there's definitely a range there. I would say that if he goes 4-8, he's definitely fired. If he goes 9-3, he's definitely keeping his job. Like,
I will agree with you, Tyler, on that, but except for one thing, I don't think there's any way he's losing his job after an 8-4 season.
You lose the last 4 games. You start off 8-0 and use your last 4 by 30 points.
I don't know, but I don't know if you're using that as a standard. We're 8-0 going into the last 4. We're probably beating 2 of the last 4.
Well, yeah, yes, I would imagine that if we start,
but it would be a very Nebraska thing to do.
Well, yeah, it would be.
After,
but I also think too, if we beat Oklahoma, that might just make us go to that 8-4 record anyway.
I hope so. I mean, I think Oklahoma's going to be interesting because I think they're going to be top 10 when we play them. I'm not convinced Oklahoma's going to be one of the 10 best teams in the country. But people like Justin will say, oh, well, that doesn't count because they probably will finish the year like 22nd. And Justin will write it off saying that, oh, it doesn't matter because they suck by the end of the year, but they'll be 6th when we play them. And he'll write that off if that happens.
I mean, he could write it off, but at the point that we play them, and if it jolts us into the 8-4 or 9-3 area because of that nice Nebraska signature win right there, then I don't think it really matters if Oklahoma ends up as the 22nd ranked team.
Which would be still a signature win.
Well, yeah.
Cracking the whipple.
Did you guys hear the Eyes on Big podcast this last week? They called it the Cool Whip offense because Frost and Whipple.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did hear that.
Pretty cool.
Now, did they use the Stewie Cool Whip?
Cool.
Why are you emphasizing? Why are you emphasizing the whip?
The whip. Yes. And then there was also the whole discussion about Big Kurt said something about playing his hand, and God Almighty, Jeffrey the Greek was like 6. He said he was 6 fingers of Amador whiskey in when they started the podcast. So then he said, "Yeah, I about played my hand too when I saw Aiden Hutchinson's mom."
Oh, geez.
I hadn't laughed that hard in a long, long time. That was so funny. So, yeah, by God, I think we've got her done. The first Big Red Roundtable is pretty much in the bag. So, I think we did good.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Everyone, we already talked, what does Scott Frost need to do to keep his job? Can I ask a stupid question here? What do you think that we actually go given our schedule next year? Is it too early to even have an opinion on that?
I haven't even
Tyler's afraid to really
go over the schedule yet because
10-2, 10-2.
Until I see the spring game, and start hearing stories from fall camp and anything like that, it's really, really hard for me to make that prediction. I would say we'll go anywhere between 5-7 and 7-5. That's where my head's at right now. We're going to be either 5-7 or somewhere in 7-5 because I'm in the middle now. I'm in the middle. The Kool-Aid is been replaced by way too much bourbon, unfortunately.
At least quality bourbon, right?
Well, not really. I drink Jim Beam, but
I always do.
I have at least switched to Gatorade after 2 bourbons, so instead of 6 bourbons like last time, and that was really bad. So
well, I've been drinking Yingling all night. So
Yingling.
So So Justin, my thing on my channel, I normally do a ceiling and a floor.
Yeah.
And I think right now Nebraska's ceiling is probably 8-4,
Okay.
and our floor is probably 5-7.
5 and
my-
7. Okay.
I think that's my prediction. Well, maybe I'll change it once I kind of start deep diving into the schedule and do that whatnot, for my future videos. But I think right now I would go with those two records.
You saw Justin Zadnicek come on and say he says 8-4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's probably a lot of listeners here, Husker fans, think that's going to be more, I don't know, more in line.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought we would do in year one. So
Yeah. I'm very pessimistic about it. Like, I really want to look at the schedule and say that's a potential win. That's a potential win. But
everything's a
like,
potential loss too.
historically, like, we just find ways to lose. Like, nothing would be more fitting than to go into week 6 against Indiana. They come to Lincoln and we just lay an absolute egg after, let's say, winning against OU. Like, that's my painful prediction is like, if we were to lose against anybody this year, it would be like Indiana, Illinois, and Minnesota, but somehow we pull off a win against like one of the 3, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowas.
I would love it. That's a signature win right there, Scott.
You know what?
Yep.
If I had to take losses to those and beat the main 3, I'll take it.
Yeah, I would lose against Indiana, like Purdue, or Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota if we somehow went 3-0 against Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. That would be awesome. But I think I'm right in the middle, just like my dad. I think the floor is seriously, painfully say it 4-8. Like, somehow we only win against North Dakota, Georgia Southern, Rutgers, and Indiana. Those are our only wins. That would be the worst case scenario, in my opinion, because unless Indiana figures out how to switch their 2-10 season to something more 500-ish, I don't know what Tom Allen is going to be doing over there. And then best case scenario, if I'm being like objective best case scenario, I think 7-5. But best case scenario, like if I were to be drinking Kool-Aid again, if I were to actually crack that bitch open, I think, we could go like 9-3 with our only losses being against Michigan, Wisconsin, or Iowa, coin flip, and OU.
Yeah, we got an entire offseason to think about, what it's going to take to get to that type of level. But I mean, to me, 4-8 is going to keep Scott Frost. He's going to be able to bring his entire staff back, even after a 4-8 season. And I don't know, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people are really encouraged by the hires that he has. So, if you just have to see a little bit of progress going on there.
So you think that he would be given leash because the people like Trev Alberts and the boosters are willing to give his new coaches leash as well?
I think so. I think so. Derek kind of touched on that a little bit, and I think he's replacing all but one person on his offensive staff. And if they can show whatever progress, because I fully expect our defense to take a step back, a step or maybe even 2 steps back with all the players that they're replacing. And then if you have all the guys that on offense that they're bringing in, this offense is going to look a little bit different. And, you're going to have that as it's like, okay, yeah, sure, they were losing, but they changed their entire offense and we have a lot of new faces. I think there will be enough evidence out there to say, okay, well, let's see what they can do next year, with all the new faces and new coaches.
Okay.
I think it's a possibility because I never thought that we would bring back Scott Frost after the 3-9 season. Nobody did, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
if you allow him to make
Frost
the changes,
I think
mean-
Frost was smart to get out ahead of it too.
yeah. And
Once
if you
he sat
allow-
down with Trev and said, "Yeah, let's renegotiate," and then he's like, "All right, I'm going to walk out of here and fire 4 dudes to try to
Yeah.
figure out how to make this thing work."
I'll
So
cut heads off of whoever,
yeah,
whoever it
it's-
takes, if I can come back. But I
yeah,
don't know.
because this is his school, and what's hurts is that 2 of the guys that he fired were guys that played here. You know,
Yeah.
that's what was hard too, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. I wish they could have figured out how to make it work.
Well,
but they
and
didn't.
that's a shitty narrative also that comes out. It's like, well, Scott Frost, he really wants to coach there. Well, you know what? So did Greg Austin, and so
Yeah.
did Ryan Held. I mean, hell, all those guys wanted to coach here. You know, it's like, is it more valuable because he's the head coach? I don't know. I mean, that's a silly narrative. You're on
Oh.
mute there, Ken. Still on mute.
blah, 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 blah.
Plugged my USB interface from my computer by accident when I reached for my Gatorade. So
Ah, there it
I
is.
guess that's what I
Yeah.
get for trying to be sober. Huh. I won't do that again.
It's never a good idea.
No, it's just I bumped my USB cable for my USB interface. So
All right,
Hey.
Chris, final thoughts, man.
I enjoyed this whole experience. I'm really happy that you guys allowed me to come on and voice my opinions on the Red Roundtable tonight. And I hope to do it with you guys again one night. I'm always open to whenever and wherever. So thanks
Okay.
for everyone participating too.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, it was a good time. I appreciate all you guys doing this. Justin, where can everybody find you out there on the
You can
social
find
media
us on
universe?
Twitter. We don't tweet a lot, but we're on Twitter at Husker Cuzcast. You can find us on Facebook, and you'll find even less of our content out there. But we are there. You can find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. We're all over the place, including Spotify. Spotify's a big one. Apple Podcasts, Podbean, wherever.
Mhm.
But yeah, we do shows all the time, so check us out.
Yeah, we are. Generation Red. You can find us at genredpod.com, and that's where you can listen to the show in your browser. You can subscribe to the show through the provided links, or even download the show right from your browser. So genredpod.com is the best place to get connected with us, or at genredpod on Twitter, as you can see down there on the screen, or facebook.com/genredpod, and Generation Red live on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. You guys are the best. John, thank you. We really appreciate the comments. We appreciate you participating. And dude, you really need to discover bourbon, because clearly you have way, way, way too much optimism. So you guys are the best. Thanks for watching. Thanks again to Chris and the Husker Cuzcast guys for joining us tonight. And Justin's cracking another Yingling, obviously for the post-show chat where we just sit and curse at each other for the next hour. So anyway,
Fun time.
you know what, guys, this has been an absolute blast. I've absolutely enjoyed this. And for anybody curious as to when the next Big Red Roundtable is occurring, it will be the second Sunday in February, and we will be having another guest on the show, and we will specifically target talking about the recruiting class and the transfer portal additions to the team. So clearly, Chris, you need to go, because Mama just
The
told
wife
you.
just woke up.
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing? Why are you talking so much? You just woke me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks again, everybody. We
Been
appreciate
there.
you watching. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Talk to you guys later.
All right,
All right,
Chris.
dude.
Have a night,
See you,
everyone.
man.
Yeah. You
Fuck
too.
Iowa. Their corn sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I have that shirt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. You got the Iowa or Hawkeyes tears tumbler.
So no, gonna be getting a shirt that says Iowa has bad corn on it. So if you guys didn't check it out on my Twitter page, I had one when I went to the Iowa State Fair. I was wearing Nebraska's way better than Iowa. Here's my wife.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Hi, wife.
He got Josie Jewell's autograph yesterday too for fun,
Yeah, I already
heard.
told him about Josie Jewell.
and how he
We
retweeted
heard.
you.
Yeah. Coming in late.
Well, this is this has been fun, boys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we will head out, and we will see you again the second Sunday in February, where we will talk about the recruiting class as well as the transfer portal additions to the team. Here's hoping Travion Citizen joins that running back room because, damn it, I guess 7 aren't enough.
Did it.
So, all righty. We'll see y'all later.
Peace out.
Later.
Go Big Red.